Hello and welcome to this Essential 6 special. I'm sure everyone watching has been shocked and saddened by the invasion of Ukraine and the unfolding humanitarian crisis. War has returned to Europe. Democracy is showing its fragility yet again. The ongoing impact is going to be deep and hard for the peoples of Ukraine, but it's also being felt more widely. And the economic headwinds that we're seeing blow across the globe are getting harder and fiercer. And to discuss that in this episode, I'm joined by RSM Chief Economist, Joe Brusuelas, to discuss some of these issues. Joe, welcome to the Essential 6. I think we were talking previously before this crisis about the economic issues on the back of the pandemic, utility prices, commodity prices, rising inflation. On both sides of the Atlantic, it's just getting a lot worse, a lot faster right now.
Well, that's right now, beyond the humanitarian issues that you mentioned and the human cost of war. Typically what happens with this type of geopolitical tension is you tend to get supply shocks. Now, the global economy, the British economy, has yet to exit from the supply shock caused by the pandemic. Unfortunately, we're going to get another one via the commodity channel and the energy channel. So if you're a firm and you operate in the British real economy or the American real economy or the global real economy, what you need to be looking at is the price of oil.
So oil at the moment is what? About the data recording is 113 a barrel of Brent crude.
Right.
I've been reading some pretty racy numbers, whether they're sensationalistic or not, about where this could go. What's the tipping point, Joe?
So we're going to move to 120 in the short run. There's just seems to be no way to avoid that. For us, the threshold's always been 130 on Brent crude, which is the global benchmark. Should there be another round of sanctions, should natural gas be cut off from Russia into Europe, and the 6 million barrels a day that Russia produces and sells into the global oil market be removed, then it's going to be to the upside. At that point, it just will be where it settles in. But above 30, you should begin thinking about downside risks to the business cycle.
So hold on, so let's be clear. Above 130 a barrel, when you talk about downside risks, you're talking about recession, are you?
Yeah, a material slowdown. When you get above 140 or near 150, then we're going to be talking about, we're going to use the R word, we're going to say recession, right? But we want to move slowly because the composition of demand and supply has changed significantly over the past 30 years. We drive electric vehicles. We couldn't have even conceived of that 20 years ago. We use natural gas, which has been a substitute for home heating oil, especially here in the UK. So in many ways, the British economy, the American economies, are well positioned to absorb this next round of shocks. But should the conflict spill over and cause a further round of sanctions, or just basically we self-sanction and sanction the Russians, and you just withdraw those 6 million barrels a day, that can't be made up. Ukrainian wheat, Russian wheat, well, we can buy it from the Brazilians, we can buy it from the Canadians, we can buy it from the Australians. Oil is very different. So that, I think, is the near-term risk. If you're a middle market business owner, you need to be on top of your supply chains, thinking about alternatives.
And it's interesting you say that in terms of markers that business leaders should be looking at. I was thinking inflation measures, but actually what you're saying now is look at the price of oil as an early indicator.
Yeah, that's the leading indicator. Inflation tends to show up with a lag. You'll see that 3 to 6 months later. And the truth is, if the price of oil moves towards, say, $150 a barrel, our clients are going to be hearing the term demand destruction. Not so much inflation, although they'll see inflation, they'll feel it, but what they're really going to be concerned about is that the price of oil moves so high that then feeds through into the cost of petrol, home heating oil, diesel, airline fuel, that individual households begin to ration. They self-ration. They just pull back. Now, what's interesting here is, and this is why we're not overreacting like a lot of sensationalistic people in the city, is that we've all been accustomed to working from home for the past 2 years. We can do this. We have the technology. There's a way in which firms can act now to allow their workers to continue to work remotely, thus actually adding to their pocketbooks and avoiding some of the negative shock that's going to be associated with those rising oil prices and the near one-to-one pass-through into petrol prices.
I get that, but a lot of businesses are at the moment suffering because of utility price rises before this crisis in the Ukraine. The inflation expectations were even 4 weeks ago were for a short, sharp peak and then a dip back towards the Bank of England's expected 2% by the end of the year. I think that's now extended out for the year, isn't it?
Yeah, that's not going to happen. You know, Tom Pugh, our UK economist, put together a real good report based off a shock model that we put together in collaboration. And it really, I think, tells the near-term story. Slower growth, not a recession, but a real shock via the energy sector. My sense here is that the British government's going to have to look at increasing the subsidies for British households in order to mitigate and partially offset that shock. But it won't be able to completely absorb it for households. Mm-hmm. So households need to be prepared for rising prices through the end of the year. Inflation is not going to be coming back to the 2% target for some time. You know, we're all of that generation. We lived through the peace following the end of the Cold War. And this has been rather sobering because when you go back and you look at the data and you read your economic history, the number one thing you associate with wars is inflation. And because we can now see this, it's important that we have these frank discussions with our clients to prepare them so that they can then think about the alternatives at hand, how they can use technology to increase efficiencies in order to reduce cost, to offset those rising prices.
Thanks, Joe. It hasn't been our usual upbeat.
No, it hasn't.
Essential 6, I'm afraid, everyone, for obvious reasons. But I think all I can suggest we do is take Joe's advice. Let's keep an eye on some of those early indicators. The price of oil is a great one for us to take away from this session. Visit the RSM UK website. Joe mentioned the recent short-term outlook by UK economist Tom Pugh. Please go and take a look at that. There's a lot of good information on there. And we'll see you real soon. Hopefully the news will be more positive. Thank you.